Don't jinx it, Anita.
Yeah, I won't. He's also very suspicious. I probably should have said that also.
Okay, let me.
Actually, Mike, speaking of jinx, my work computer, something went wrong with the camera. I was blinking in black and white, and it looked like a ghost. So,
Oh.
Raj, I seem to have lost access to the rest of my computer now. Is there a way I can minimize the screen?
Okay, so you mean, so what you do is on the, just if you go to the control panel, David.
Yeah.
Right. And then hit on more.
More, I'm not seeing that. Show, hide thumbnail, video.
Yeah, more. If you just hit more.
I don't seem to have that.
Okay, so on the control panel, or just hit escape and that screen will kind of minimize. You'll see an option to minimize it.
Not working. I'm on a Mac. I don't know if that has anything to do with it.
Okay, so do you see a control screen? I mean, like, do you see the Zoom controls?
I do. It's on 50%, but it seemed to only shrink the presentation, not. Oh, I see an exit full screen. There we go. That should hopefully work.
That's it.
Yeah, now we're good. Okay, perfect.
Excellent. So if all of you don't mind, if all of you can actually, let me just make sure I have David, Mary Claire, Naumaan, and Anita. Okay, excellent. If all of you can go to mute and mute your video camera as well, I will prompt you as needed. We will be starting in 2 minutes. Thank you. And Prabhu, yourself as well.
I'm already muted, and I also mute my video because I'm not going to be speaking, so I'm just here to watch.
Exactly. So we have folks joining in, so we'll give everybody some time. Thank you. Good morning to all of you participating from US and Canada. Namaskar to all of you participating from India. Welcome to Georgia Indo-American Chamber of Commerce's webinar, Retaining Talent in North America, What Can Canada Offer? My name is S.K. Raj. I am member of the board and president of GIACC. I will be moderating this webinar. On my professional side, I am the vice president of an Atlanta-based technology company called 4R Tech. Today, we have 3 featured speakers and 1 guest speaker, David Weiner, Consul and Trade Commissioner with the Consulate General of Canada here in Atlanta, Georgia. For those of you who don't know what GIACC is and what we do, GIACC is a non-profit volunteer organization with a mission to promote trade and commerce between India and US, specifically the state of Georgia. We do this by hosting events like Indian Film Festival, Tourism Expo, hosting delegation from India, sending delegation to India, and socials for members to network and working closely with Consulate General of India in Atlanta. Our members include small business owners, attorneys, bankers, and career professionals. Our sponsors include UPS and ICICI Bank. We also partner with other chambers, the Korean Chamber of Commerce and Indo-American Chamber of Commerce, our event partner for this event. Now, I'd like to present to you today's agenda. The format of the webinar is as follows. I'll introduce our guest speaker and featured speakers one at a time, and they'll present their subject matter for a few minutes. Thereafter, we'll open the floor for questions. We have a lot of ground to cover today. Please ensure your Zoom participant settings remain at audio mute and video disabled. I see one of you, I think it is Grace. Your video is enabled, please. Yes, thank you, appreciate that. If you have questions for the speakers, please send a chat message to me using the Zoom chat option and only to me, and I'll post it to the speaker during Q&A. I cannot promise we'll get to all the questions, but I'll certainly try. For your information, a recording of this webinar in its entirety will be available at our website, www.giacc.net, not giacc.com, giacc.net tomorrow. Okay, let me stop my thing. Our guest speaker today is David Bruce Weiner, Consul and Senior Trade Commissioner at Consulate General of Canada in Atlanta, Georgia. Mr. Weiner is a career diplomat serving with the Canadian Foreign Service since 1991. He has been on assignments at several embassies in US, Brazil, and Germany. He has extensive background in international business development and trade policy. I present you with pleasure Consul and Senior Trade Commissioner David Weiner and request him to make his introductory remarks.
Great, and thank you, Raj. Good afternoon, everyone. Good evening for those listening in India, or I guess it's good morning. I'd like to begin by thanking Anita Linan, SK Raj, and the Georgia Indo-American Chamber of Commerce for their collaboration on this webinar. Attracting and retaining talent in North America is a very relevant topic in today's immigration climate. And there's good reason why Canada should be top of mind as you build your talent management strategy. One key reason is the special relationship between Canada and India. Canada and India have a robust relationship with historical ties due to our shared Commonwealth heritage, our continent-sized territories with a federal system of government, our many shared values such as our belief in democracy, the rule of law, and human rights. And both of our countries are multicultural, multi-ethnic, and multilingual societies that welcome diversity of thought and free speech. India and Canada also enjoy an equally strong economic partnership. Canada exports to India were worth $4.8 billion in 2019, and India's exports to Canada were slightly larger at $5.2 billion. India is Canada's 9th largest export market and our 10th largest trading partner. Canada and India have been engaged in bilateral negotiations towards both a comprehensive economic partnership agreement and a foreign investment protection agreement. Canada and India also hold regular ministerial dialogues on trade and investment as well as energy. And we also have advanced suite of bilateral agreements and MOUs that touch on multiple areas of mutual interest. But this special relationship between India and Canada is also buttressed by exceptionally strong interpersonal relationships, with Canada being home to one of the world's largest South Asian communities on a per capita basis. Approximately 5.6% of Canada's population, or just under 2 million people, are Canadians of Indian heritage. This diaspora includes numerous ministers in Canada's current government's cabinet, and Indian Canadians are amongst the highest educated and most successful and affluent groups in Canada. And it's not just Indo-Canadians that are doing well in Canada. Our country attracts and welcomes the brightest and most talented people from all over the world. That is why the share of foreign-born residents in Canada's population is higher than any other G7 country. Today, roughly 20%, or 1 in 5 Canadian residents, is foreign-born. By comparison, around 12% of the US population was born abroad. And what kind of talent is Canada attracting? Well, in 2017, the top 5 occupations were information systems analysts and consultants, software engineers, computer programmers, and interactive media developers, financial auditors, and we cannot forget accountants. Why do I mention all of this? Well, the foundation is already present to use Canada as a stepping stone for your global expansion needs. Our duty-free access to the US market through the USMCA agreement gives us unhindered access to the biggest economic region in the world, encompassing a $22 trillion regional market of more than 480 million consumers. Canada also has free trade agreements with all G7 countries. We're the only G7 country to have such arrangements. And in total, Canada has free trade agreements with 51 countries, meaning we enjoy preferential access to a global market representing 2/3 of the world's GDP. In addition, Canada is ranked as having the most stable banking system in the G7, and offers fiscal incentives such as duty-free manufacturing and an accelerated capital cost allowance that allows companies to write off 100% of their capital investments in year one of the investment. To sum it all up, Canada offers an excellent opportunity to reach global markets while de-risking exposure to unexpected shifts in things like tariffs and immigration policies. At the Canadian Consulate General here in Atlanta, we offer business advisory services, free business advisory services to help guide companies in establishing a presence in Canada. Members of our investment attraction team joining us here today, Prabhu Hariharan and Annie Franklin, are currently working with multiple Indian companies to establish in Canada to support their North American expansion needs. A key rationale for this, as you will learn in today's discussion, is due to Canada's merit-based visa system, which allows companies to bring talent to Canada within weeks. Companies that are facing immigration headwinds in the US are increasingly realizing that Canada can be part of the solution to the challenges they are facing. In today's presentations, you will hear that as you develop your strategies to serve the North American market and build your talent base here, it is no longer a question of going to the US or going to Canada. Rather, it's increasingly about developing a plan that leverages all the benefits of both countries and using Canada to serve both the US and the Canadian markets, as well as markets beyond. Canada's ability to bring in offshore talent in a simple, rapid, predictable, and business-friendly way to support specific labor areas such as tech allows companies to nearshore talent in Canada to support both the Canadian and American, their Canadian and American market needs. I look forward to today's discussion. If I've managed to pique your interest, please reach out to Prabhu, Annie, or me at the Consulate General of Canada here in Atlanta. It will be a pleasure for us to serve you and your company's needs. Thanks very much.
Thank you, David. Very few people actually realize the common link between Canada and India, and I'm really glad that you pointed it out for our brethren joining from India and what GIACC stands for.
Great, thanks, Raj.
Thank you, David. Our first featured speaker today, Anita Linan, will briefly share current US immigration highlights. Anita has been an attorney for over 10 years practicing law, both at India and the state of Georgia. She is the founder and principal attorney of Ninan Legal. She helps foreign nationals on visa, green card, and US naturalization matters. Ms. Ninan is the current chairperson of GIACC and serves as honorary legal advisor to the Indian Consul General of Atlanta. Ms. Ninan. Anita? Anita, are you there?
Sorry, I was on mute. Okay. Thank you, Raj. Before I hand over to my expert Canadian co-panelists, I would like to briefly focus on some key developments in US immigration law, which symbolize the headwinds that foreign nationals and foreign companies have been facing under
Anita, sorry to interrupt you. Would you
Yes.
mind switching your video on so the participants can see?
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Okay.
That's all right.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I'm just going to talk about some of the key developments under US immigration law. As you all are aware, there are certain travel bans in place. Most importantly, we have certain physical presence bans due to COVID. Fortunately, India is not one of the COVID hotspots which has been impacted by this ban. There are presidential proclamations which are currently in effect. Most importantly, the ones that were promulgated in April and in June. Basically suspending the entry of immigrants and non-immigrants into the US, since they were considered a risk to the US labor force during COVID. These are expected to expire in December. However, there is every expectation that they are going to be renewed and continued till the end of the Trump administration. And of course, we believe that they will be affirmatively rescinded by the Biden administration when it takes charge. In October this year, there were two interim final rules which were passed by the US Department of Homeland Security and the US Department of Labor. The DHS interim final rule made significant changes to the H-1B program, including redefining the concept of specialty occupation, requiring that H-1B beneficiaries' bachelor's degrees are directly related to the job duties of the preferred position, limiting the L-1B visa validity for petitions relating to third-party work sites. And that, of course, affects a lot of Indian consulting companies. And of course, the US DOL interim final rule made significant changes to the wage methodology for determining the prevailing wage for H-1B petitions and the perm process related to US green card processing. In November, that is last month, fortunately, of course, a good development this week has been due to cases filed against these interim final rules that they have been enjoined by the US District Court of the Northern District of California. So that is good news because the implications have been huge for H-1B petitioning companies in terms of extreme fiscal pressure because of exponential increases in the salaries that they would have to offer H-1B potential prospective hires. In November of this year, USCIS has proposed a rule relating to changes in the H-1B CAP registration process. The current process is, of course, a random selection of H-1B petitions. They have sought to replace it by a system where the H-1B petitioning company, which offers the highest preferred wage relating to the highest prevailing wage relating to that particular job classification, will be prioritized in the selection process. Looking forward and ahead under a Biden-Harris administration, there is every expectation that the Trump era policies relating to immigration will be reversed. As regards the timelines, there is no telling, which way, how fast these things, these changes will happen. It will depend upon the type of action that needs to be taken. Executive orders can, of course, be reversed and rescinded fairly quickly. However, if it is rulemaking, those processes will have to follow their own timeline, which are more, which will be longer. They may require congressional review, or they will have to go through the entire rulemaking process, which will obviously be a longer process. So given these temporary headwinds, as David said, for companies that are looking to continue and expand their operations here in North America, we still have great options in Canada. Right now, I think we have our Canadian friends, Marie Claire, who's going to tell you about the immigration possibilities for India, for foreign nationals and for foreign companies, as well as Naumaan, who will speak to the investment and opportunities for foreign companies in Canada. Thank you again.
Thank you, Anita. I'm sure everybody is wondering with the new administration coming how things are going to change, and I'm sure there'll be some questions from the participants as well. Our next featured speaker, hold on one second, let me. Our next featured speaker is Marie Claire Lemay. Ms. Lemay is the Consul Migration and is based out of Consulate General of Canada in Miami, Florida. She has been a part of Canadian Foreign Service since 2002 and has served in several countries all around the world. She's fluent in English, French, and Spanish, but don't worry, today she'll be speaking in English. It is with great pleasure I present to you Marie-Claire Lemay, Consul Immigration, to talk about Canadian immigration pathways.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for this kind introduction. It's great to be here today with all of you. As mentioned, my name is Marie-Claire and I work for IRCC, which is the Canadian Immigration Department, if you wish. I'm part of a wider network of officers located in over 50 countries in the world. We have visa offices, if we look at the US, in New York, in Washington, DC, in Los Angeles. And in India, we have visa offices in New Delhi, in Bangalore, and in Chandigarh. I think when considering doing business in a new country, we understand that one of the most important aspects is access to talent. And Canada is giving you the possibility to easily access the talent that you need. And I think it's important to frame this as not about being, choosing Canada over another country, but rather about, as was mentioned, considering Canada as part of your wider or global strategy. So in order to facilitate this, Canada launched back in 2017 its global skills strategy. So basically the intent was to streamline ways to bring top talent, whether it's managers, professionals, employees in highly specialized or in-demand occupations to Canada. So we started to make the process easier. We have a lot of online applications, so you don't have to line up or fill out pieces of paper or anything like that. We wanted to make it fast. So as you will see in some of the programs I will mention, there's a lot of expedited processing available. And we wanted to make it predictable. So there's no caps based on nationalities. And we have, for the global skills strategy, the approval rate is over 90%. So, it's basically most people get approved as long as they qualify. I think I'll go straight to the subject. The burning question is, what's the fastest way to get a worker to Canada, or whether it's you or whether it's an employee you would like to bring to Canada? So the answer would be, a work permit, obviously, but you may want to look at, is there a way I can bring that worker under the International Mobility Program? So for Indian citizens, it typically involves scenario with intra-company transferees. That's the one we see most often. So to qualify for that, you will need to show that you've been employed on a full-time basis at least 1 year in the past 3 years in the company. You would be transferring to a parent, subsidiary, branch, or affiliate of that company in Canada. And you're going to be working at the executive, senior manager, or in a specialized knowledge capacity in Canada. So if you meet that and you apply online, the application process in terms of the work permit processing can be as fast as 2 weeks. And so it's very fast, but obviously it's very restrictive in terms of that particular program. If you do not qualify under the International Mobility Program, don't lose hope. There are still other ways we can expedite processing in other ways. So in these cases, you'd be looking at what we call regular work permit application under the Temporary Foreign Worker Program. So to qualify for that, you need to have, obviously, a valid job offer from a Canadian employer. And the Canadian employer needs to obtain a positive labor market impact assessment. So what is this LMIA? It's basically the employer in Canada needs to show that there's a need for a foreign worker to fill that particular job. So they need to have made usually efforts to recruit locally before they bring a foreign worker to Canada. The good news is that the LMIA process can be expedited if the worker qualifies under what we call the global talent stream. So there's 2 ways you can qualify for that. So one is if, as an applicant, you're referred by a designated partner. Prime example, we had our speaker earlier on, is the Canadian Trade Commissioner Service. They can refer companies making a significant investment to Canada and who would want, in this case, say to bring a manager or somebody attached to that company, in link with that investment to Canada. And that comes with the possibility to have a dedicated account manager from my department. So basically think about a concierge service for all your visa immigration needs if you're being referred by one of those designated partners. Another way also you could qualify under the global talent stream is if you have a worker, whether it's you or your employee, whose occupation is listed on the global talent occupations list. So the list is available online. So if you go on our website, you just Google it. It's easy to find. It's publicly available. And the list can change over time, but roughly speaking, at the moment, a lot of the listed occupations are IT-related workers. So if you're an IT worker, it's very likely you would qualify under the GTS. So for work permit applicants falling under the global talent stream, process can be as fast as 4 or 5 weeks, I would say, if you apply online. Why is that? It's because you're going to need about 2-3 weeks for the expedited LMIA process. And then after that, you're going to need another 2-3 weeks for the actual work permit application process. So I'm talking in terms of prime example, if you have an Indian citizen here. So still fairly fast, not as fast as the International Mobility Program, but still, reasonable time frame we're looking at. I think it's important to mention too that if you have a spouse, common law partner, dependent children, they can accompany the worker to Canada. We like to keep the families together, and they're usually eligible for their own study permit or open work permit when they accompany the main worker in this case. I understand. So I talked a little bit about temporary residence work permit. Now I'm going to move on in terms of permanent residence, because we understand that in many cases, some may also be interested in bridging or to pursue permanent residence as well in Canada. So in terms of skilled workers and entrepreneurs, I think there might be 2 programs that could be of particular interest to this audience here today. For entrepreneurs, we have what we call the Startup Visa Program. So to qualify, you need to have an innovative business ID, and you need to get a letter of support from a designated organization in Canada. So it could be a venture capital funds, angel investor group, business incubator, and you can find the list of those designated organizations on the link that I've put at the bottom of the screen here. So if you go to that link, you're going to have the actual list of all these organizations that could possibly provide you with such letter of support. Application processing time for startup visa is 12-16 months roughly. But the good news again is that while you wait for your permanent residence to be processed, you can be eligible for an LMIA exempt work permit to get your business started. So basically you can already go to Canada on a work permit on a temporary basis to get your business started while your permanent residence is being processed. Another popular options in terms of permanent residence with skilled worker is our Express Entry. So Express Entry is an online system that we use to manage applications for permanent residents coming from skilled worker of all kinds, not necessarily just IT, could be any skilled work. It's a merit-based system, so there's no cap based on nationality, and those who score as most likely to succeed economically get invited to apply for permanent residence. So it's free to register as a candidate in the pool of candidates in the system, as long as you meet the minimum eligibility criteria of one of 3 programs. Generally speaking, these minimum criteria involve at least 1 year of full-time work experience in a skilled profession, and also a certain fluency in one of Canada's official languages, so either English or French. If you are interested in finding out more, because this is a whole other subject I could talk about, I've put on the screen a link to a registration link to a non-demand webinar that we have on Express Entry, where we explain, the whole scoring system and how the system works. So if you want to find out more about that, I highly encourage you to register, and we'll send you the link to the actual webinar so that you can get more information. And at the end of the webinar too, there's also our contact information if you have further questions, general questions about that. Express Entry, we invite top scorers every 2 weeks. So again, it's fairly dynamic, very fast. And once invited, the candidates must provide a complete permanent resident application where they can include, again, their spouse, common law partner, dependent children. And our standard processing time for Express Entry permanent resident application is 6 months. So it's fairly fast, again, in terms of processing, I believe, for these applicants. So to summarize, I think Canada has made the visa and immigration process easy with a lot of online applications. We've made it fast. Again, I've mentioned a few possibilities for expedited processing in our different lines of business. And we've made it predictable, no caps based on things like nationalities, and approval rate, if we look at high skilled talent, work permit, over 90%. And, we welcome immigrants in Canada. So I encourage you to consider options in Canada. And if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact us. Thank you.
Marie-Claire, thank you so much. That was very informative, and you have covered so much ground in the short time that you had. I really, really appreciate it. And I'm sure a lot of our participants also feel that way, but I'm also sure they're going to have a lot of questions. We do have some questions already coming from our participants, so we'll be sure to address it in the Q&A space. Thank you so much. Our fourth and final speaker today is Naumaan Hameed, partner and Canadian practice leader for immigration with KPMG Law in Canada. Naumaan is a certified specialist in immigration law and actively works with senior government officials both in Canada and on policy and policy analysis and development matters. I present to you now with great pleasure Naumaan Hameed of KPMG Law to talk about Canadian immigration and investment programs.
Great. Thank you so much, Raj. And it's an absolute pleasure to be speaking on behalf of this association with such a talented group of speakers. They've done a lot of the heavy lifting, which is ideal for me. So I can talk to you a little bit more about trending issues in the markets and some thoughts that may be relevant for many of those in the audience today. Just from a personal perspective, in terms of work, I'm really missing my connection to the Indian market. Pre-COVID, we typically travel to India at least 3 or 4 times a year and work with many companies. So I'm really missing out on the ability of getting on a plane and seeing everybody. So hopefully that will happen in the near future with the vaccine. The first observation I think that's useful when we talk about talent and strategy is really understanding what's happened in terms of the impact of COVID-19 on mobility professionals and companies that need talent. And, without much notice, we saw the sudden closure of borders. We saw in certain countries, immigration policies becoming quite restrictive. But on the flip side, you saw opportunities, in particular regions like Canada, where the policy continues to be very pro-employer. And I think that's useful. We had a survey at KPMG with CEOs. And one of the issues we observed is that talent now ranks as the #1 issue for CEOs, knowing that it's harder to move talent across borders, knowing that the absence of talent really impacts your ability to serve clients or to grow your business. It's really become high on the scale of issues, which is good for those people in the business that need to be able to mobilize workers to be able to execute. So it's on the mind of companies. And interestingly, we see that even thoughts of new strategies like remote work has been tabled within corporations and really challenging the status quo. And that's one of my messages today is if there was any kind of opportunity to rethink about workforce models, COVID has allowed that conversation. It's really accelerated it. And one of the observations I make to many of my colleagues in other parts of the world is, although the borders are theoretically closed in Canada, there's been a lot of activity for companies outside of Canada, whether it's India, the US, or beyond, really thinking about how Canada might play a part of their talent equation. And I think the way I'll move into the next piece of this discussion, hopefully it'll be interesting because it's relevant for companies that have an Indian connection, is a real life scenario. I was approached by one of my clients who called me and said he wanted to speak to me about a particular matter relating to immigration. And this particular client was Indian based, They had some Canadian operations and a very healthy US operation. And he flew to Toronto and actually spoke with me. And he said, you know, Naumaan, year after year, we're very happy. Our business is doing tremendously well, particularly in the United States. We land contracts, we sign commitments, and then we rapidly look for getting the right resources into the country. And he says, one of the challenges is, you know, we exhaust all the alternatives. We apply through the H-1 visa cap. We wait, we hope we get the right result. We leverage the L-1B program. We look to transition to green cards, but inevitably we're generating more work than we can serve. And then we're under pressure from the client because we can't get enough resources to deliver. So he said, Naumaan, like, this is insanity. There must be another way. There must be some other strategies to think about to do things better. And that was kind of the assignment given to me. And when I left, I really started thinking about how could you remodel a more effective strategy? And the idea that's been touched on, I mean, David used the terms of, you know, complementary strategies in North America and looking at de-risking certain issues. And Anita has really nicely covered off the fact that there is still a lot of uncertainty, particularly for companies that are going to be working at third-party client sites as to how to manage this issue. And what made sense, and Marie-Claire then talked about a lot of categories where you can bring in, whether it's tech workers or high-skilled workers under many different streams and pathways to Canada in really efficient times and on many levels. And so what I took back to my client was, why don't you rethink your philosophy entirely? Why not think of North America as one commercial market? And where you need talent and you're unable to access talent in the US system, why not consider proactively looking at the gaps that you face and bringing in those resources if they're in certain occupations and creating a talent hub in Canada? And that might be aligned geographically to your operation in the US. And the idea is, if you know that you need X number of people, perhaps in year one, they come through Canada, they get set up, whether it's in your existing operation in Canada or you're setting up a new operation in Canada. They can be onboarded. The world of remote work has never been more embraced than now. So theoretically, these workers can be working on Canadian matters as well as supporting US operations. And then the flip side is, over a period of time, they may be able to actually obtain an L1 visa from the Canadian side to the US side if they wanted to go on an assignment and actually work on site in the US. So theoretically, you're still putting both options on the table, but there's more proactive planning in terms of getting talent into Canada, making sure you've got those resources in North America, and then potentially deploying talent, you know, across the border. And I think you always have to think about the human perspective. COVID-19 has really had an impact on expats who are traveling internationally. And one of the issues I hear from many people is, we want to make sure that we can obtain permanent residence for ourselves and our family members and know that we have a home base. And what's very interesting is that in Canada, if you obtain a work permit, depending on all the factors that Marie-Claire mentioned, your age, your education, your language ability, you may very well qualify for permanent residence under our express entry system. There are other streams as well. Within a year or two, you could obtain permanent residence. And then if you were assigned to a work arrangement in the US, like an L1 visa, interestingly, in Canada, any time that you spend on an assignment in the US counts as if you were spending that time in Canada for the purpose of maintaining your permanent residence status. So ultimately, you could create a mobile North American workforce where individuals start off in Canada, they learn about your organizational needs in North America, they could apply for permanent residence in Canada, take an assignment to the US, support the operation, you know, get their exposure to that piece of the business, and either remain there for a longer duration or ultimately return back. And that was really the message I wanted to provide to the audience today, which is this is a great time to think about new models, make sure that it works for your business, that you're getting access to the right talent, and you're thinking about your employees. They really do feel uneasy if they're in a foreign country and they don't know if they can ultimately localize. And I think having a really good discussion with stakeholders on this call about how that can work is very useful. And I can tell you, we've been having regular calls from companies, in the US, India, and all over the world about how to develop this strategy. And hopefully there'll be some opportunities for questions throughout the rest of the session. So thank you.
Naumaan, thank you so much. You are spot on that. I'm already seeing questions popping up on the chat window about this. So trust me, we are going to have some questions. So without much further ado, I would certainly love to get into the Q&A portion of this the webinar. I request all our featured speakers, Anita, David, and Mary Claire, to unmute your video and audio so I can get you on the screen. Just for the information of our participants, the way that the questions will be asked will be, I have a list of questions that I'm going to ask each of our featured speaker on a round robin basis, so we get to hear all of their perspectives. If you have any questions while I'm posing these questions, please feel free to post your question in the chat window. And as I said, in the interest of time, we may or may not get to your question. However, if we don't have enough time to address your question today, feel free to send an email to us, and we will give you that information. As you can see below, the email ID is giacc@pro-apg.com. If you want, please note that down. Of course, this presentation and the whole recording will be available in our website tomorrow. You can send an email to us personally, and we will try to pass that on to the relevant speaker featured today so that we'll try to get an answer for you. So with that said, I'm going to stop sharing the presentation here and get into our Q&A mode. I request all those of you who are participants not to switch your video on during this presentation, and keep your also your audio on mute. We would just like to focus on our featured speakers. Anita, can I request you to?
You have to put my video on,
Raj.
Raj.
Hold on 1 second. Let me, okay. And then let me also, okay, I think I have all 4 of you.
Yes.
Excellent, fantastic. So again, speakers, it was definitely all of you. Thank you so much. It was very enlightening to hear all of your perspectives. So I'd like to start by posing the first question to David. The past 4 years has seen I would say, a major shift in US policies on immigration and trade matters. We are at the cusp of a new administration that's going to come in January of 2021. So David, from Canada's perspective, do you see there's going to be any seismic shift in how trade, commerce, and immigration is going to continue from January 2021 under the new administration? Does Canada have any shift in the policy?
Canada's policies won't shift. We are stable, we're predictable, and that's why I talked in my presentation, Raj, about using Canada as part of a strategy to mitigate risk, whether that's exposure to tariffs. We don't have Section 232 or Section 301 type tariffs in Canada. We're working, our country is working very hard to expand the number of free trade arrangements we have around the world. Hopefully we'll have one sometime soon with India, but we're growing our relationships. As I mentioned, we have those 51 free trade agreements, and we need talent. We bring in about actually Mary Claire could probably give you the numbers, but we bring in about 1% of our population each year as new immigrants. We welcome immigrants. Immigrants to Canada are overwhelmingly more successful, better educated than Canadian-born citizens in many cases. So we look forward to that. We're not changing our policies at all. We've been consistent for years. And as Naumaan was saying, it's a great opportunity to leverage the advantages that both countries offer. And if the U.S. system changes and opens a bit more, that's great. But there will always be advantages to having a presence in more than one market on that risk mitigation front. And we just welcome the opportunity to work with more businesses. So I hope I've answered your question.
Thank you. Thank you. It certainly gives insight. The next question is for Anita. Anita, are there any exceptions under which foreign Indian nationals stuck outside the US can re-enter while the US presidential proclamations are valid?
Yes, absolutely. There are what is called the national interest exceptions, which are available to H-1B, L-1 professionals who are stuck outside currently. They can make a case that they are absolutely essential to the businesses that they serve in the US. They may be, serving sectors which have been identified as critical infrastructure sectors. And I must say the information technology sector is one such sector. So tech professionals who are stuck outside can make a case. You can ask for an expedited emergency appointment at your US consular post abroad and, present the case that, you are needed for your business in the US, and you should be able to get a visa.
Okay, thank you very much, Anita. Okay, thank you very much, Anita. This next question is for Marie-Claire. What are some of the main reasons a Canadian work permit may be refused, especially in case of highly skilled or specialized knowledge workers? I mean, what should they be looking for in their applications that could potentially be, construed as something that would be a roadblock?
Yeah, so thank you for the questions. I think first I want to reiterate, as I mentioned, if you are an applicant or you have an employee who applies under our global skills strategy, you're most likely going to be approved. The approval rate is over 90%. So, unless you have perhaps an incomplete application or certain factors, I can mention a few. Usually it's pretty much a given. If you're qualified, you have a valid job offer, you're qualified for the job. There's limited reasons why we will refuse the work permit. So what we've seen, and I chat with my fellow officers in the US, for instance, what we see sometimes with skilled workers is that sometimes they fail to demonstrate that they meet the requirements of the job offer. So it's not that they're not qualified, it's just that they don't show it to us. So, for example, if you have a job offer that says you need to have a certain type of training, you need to have a certain type of experience, please provide that evidence to the visa officer, because we cannot guess that you have that experience or training unless you show it to us. So sometimes, unfortunately, it's just a matter of the applicant is not providing enough or satisfying evidence that they are qualified for the job that's been offered. With specialized knowledge workers, so I'm thinking, for example, intra-company transferees, sometimes we don't see enough evidence of knowledge at an advanced level of expertise, or proprietary knowledge of the company's products, services, or techniques at a high degree. So again, it's a matter of showing the officer that you have that expertise, the knowledge. So it's the matter of providing the documents, basically. In the US, we see it a little more, I think, than in India. We have also sometimes applicants who may be criminally inadmissible. So, for example, you might have that old DUI from 9 years ago, that you forgot about it. Unfortunately, it may render you inadmissible to Canada due to a past conviction. The good news is that there are legal remedies available, but obviously you're not going to have a 2-week turnaround in these cases. And these would need to be addressed first before you can actually get into the work permit process. So I would say these are the main ones.
Thank you very much, Marie-Claire. That is certainly helpful. I'm sure everybody, was wondering, and we do have a bunch of other questions that I see in the pop window, in the chat window, popping up constantly. So I will try to get to more questions. So the next question is for actually Naumaan. Naumaan, I do see in our participants, some of them are asking, hey, how do I set up a company in Canada, and so on and so forth. But this is generally a broader question, right? For the benefit of all our chamber members and those who are participating today. How frequently are you seeing Indian companies in the US trying to either set up a new operation or expanding their operations in Canada? I mean, do you have any kind of statistics in your practice that you have, like, this is why, this is the number of folks with, both base ties to India and US trying to do in Canada?
I don't have an actual number, but I can give you some perspective on that. I would say, typically we're getting somewhere between, 2 to 3 calls at least every 2 weeks from companies either in India or in Canada asking about this very issue. And it's interesting because it's typically the C-suite level with HR and the CFO. And the reason they're asking is they're interested in understanding the tax consequences and how do I structure this accordingly and what would be the best setup. And they're understanding as well, hand in hand, if we do this, how will it help us on the talent strategy? And the third piece, which is business development, is really figuring out how do we ensure that we're as successful as possible. And so I think that's why this call is very appealing, because all of those are moving parts. And the one point I would make from the immigration lens is typically we're relevant, but the discussion starts on the tax side normally about what the most advantageous structure is, whether these are going to be related operations or if it's going to be a standalone operation. There's lots of incentives that might be able to be taken advantage of as well. And so it's a thoughtful business discussion. And then once the structure is identified, we're fortunate in Canada because there are many different immigration options. So Marie-Claire rightly suggested that if you've got related operations and the ownership is shared, there's an intra-company transfer where foreign workers can be transferred quite easily. If that's not on the table and it's a company that's not related, then the discussion might look at the global talent stream or another category of work permits. But what's really important is that you line up the tax, the immigration, and the business strategies so that you're successful. And my last comment would be, in addition to companies wanting to expand into Canada, the other trend that I've seen with some fairly significant numbers are US companies that have now decided that the first phase of a project may be better off done in Canada. And so they've shifted a lot of that project work to Canada. And the thinking is implementation would then happen in the US. So you're seeing it at all levels of size of company as well.
Thank you, Naumaan. That certainly is insightful. I'd like to follow to your response to David. David, do you have any kind of statistics on this from your consulate perspective on, how many companies that are trying to start operations in India, Indian and with operations in US or without operations trying to establish operations in Canada? Do you have any statistics on that, David?
I don't have any hard statistics, and we're one of several offices in the US, but I can say anecdotally that the vast majority of companies that we're working with at the moment have linkages to India. Some of them are Indian companies based in the US. Others are companies from abroad in India or even in third countries that are looking at Canada. And we're happy to serve all of the above. We work seamlessly with all of our offices around the world. And we have a support network back in Canada of people like Naumaan or with provinces and cities, and we can help find the best sites and the best partners to help that business grow. And we want those businesses to succeed because this is a word of mouth industry. We want companies to keep growing in Canada and to speak well of Canada moving forward. But unquestionably, we've seen a large increase in Indian companies expressing interest in Canada. There's not only the people that we'd like to bring over to North America for our talent needs, but also there's the current H-1B employees that are running out of runway. They can't renew anymore. Why lose that talent? Why not nearshore them? And one of the advantages of some of our permanent residency options is that once you're a permanent resident in Canada, you can visit the US without a visa, even if you don't hold a Canadian passport yet. So there's a lot of advantages to Canada and putting that talent just across the border.
Thank you, David. That certainly helps. Anita, I have a very quick question for you in the interest of time. I guess with the new administration coming, a Biden administration coming, there is an expectation that this new administration will be more favorable to Indian nationals and companies. Do you see any significant things that's going to happen in Q1, Q2 of 2021 that would give impetus to this?
Well, certainly in terms of timeline, I cannot make any guesses because a lot will depend on the support that the Biden administration can muster in Congress and especially the Senate. However, in terms of the Biden immigration plan, there are certain proposals which will definitely be of benefit to Indian nationals and Indian companies. And one of them is, of course, they're looking to increase the number of H-1B visas, that is visas available for highly skilled professionals. And of course, Indians would benefit from that. As you know, the H-1B program, it's a quota-based program with a maximum of 85,000 visas currently available annually. Additionally, I think they have a proposal to remove the per country limits for employment-based immigrant visas in the US. There is a 7% per country limit. And when you have so many applicants from countries like India, the backlog and the waiting is forever, for US green cards. And then, of course, finally, I think there is a proposal to remove the 140,000 annual cap for employment-based visas. And they want to kind of link it to the macroeconomic condition of the US labor market and not just have this annual cap. So I think
it looks like there's a whole bunch of things that's going to be coming in the pipeline that is certainly very exciting to hear. Let's hope. Thank you so much, Anita. This question is for Mary Claire. This question is from Sayali. I hope I'm pronouncing the name correctly for one of our participants. And the question to you, Mary Claire, is the following, right? Are there temporary residence programs applicable to healthcare workers and public health professionals, such as epidemiologists? And a follow-up to that is, where can we obtain an insight about the job market for healthcare professionals in Canada?
So to keep it very brief, in order to be eligible for a work permit, you need to have a Canadian job offer. So you will need to perhaps approach, clinics, hospitals, or potential employers in Canada to see if they have maybe vacancies. I think a good website the government has is Job Banks, Canada Job Banks. So if you can Google that, where you can see basically thousands of jobs that are currently vacant and available in Canada, to give you a little taste and maybe to see which companies may be looking for certain talent in particular in your area. Once you have a Canadian job offer, this is where, this is when the work permit process can start kicking in. So I would suggest maybe start with the job banks as a start.
Thank you, Mary Claire. That certainly helps. And I hope, Sayali, your question was answered. And of course, if you have more questions, please send an email to the email ID that I told you earlier, and we'll be happy to pass it on to Mary Claire. This next question is for Naumaan. Naumaan, okay, let me see. I have two questions here to choose from. I'm trying to see. Have companies been able to expand to Canada and obtain work permits notwithstanding COVID-19?
That's a good question, because in the media, we see lots of commentary about travel restrictions. And the short answer is yes. So we've had some interesting companies with good profile based in the US who were able to actually, from beginning to end, enter Canada within 5 weeks. And that's from the time of initial contact to filing the application, to then managing the entry at the port of entry at the airport. And so it takes coordination, it takes the right case, and it takes strategy in terms of understanding the restrictions. If an individual does not require a visa and they're in the United States, they can actually travel to Canada and get a work permit on the spot. And we've done that quite regularly. Where it gets a little bit more complicated is if the individual is residing in the US but needs a visa, they have to file online and it gets processed at a consulate. And there, the priority right now is essential services. But there's quite an exhaustive list of how essential services are understood, and many industries may have an element where they're contributing. So it takes a review to see if you can find the relevance of the service in the Canadian market. But the short answer is it can be done. A few extra steps for now. And I think we're all looking forward post the vaccine to getting back to the regular nature of processing, but we've been able to manage in many cases to date.
Thank you, Naumaan. And I would love to get to many more questions that the participants are posing, but in the interest of time, we have come to a last summary. I now request our past chairperson, Sanjoy Kumar, who is an attorney, founding attorney at KPB Law, to propose a vote of thanks.
Thank you so much, Raj. This has been incredible. It has, you have covered so many topics that we've been hearing so much about. I'm a corporate lawyer doing a lot of cross-border work, and like Naumaan, really missing my India trips that we did frequently. But Naumaan, thank you so much for your insight. Marie-Claire, you covered an incredible amount of information in such a short time. So thank you to you. Thank you to our own Anita Linan and David Weiner. Thank you for bringing the gravitas of your office. And thank you to the Canadian Consulate, both Atlanta and Miami, for participating. We also really want to thank IACC, our partner chamber out of India. We have developed a really close relationship with them and their executive director, Rakhi Sikka, who we've had the pleasure of meeting both in Mumbai and hosting her in Atlanta. So thank you to all of you as we continue virtually at GIACC to bring you as many topics of interest as we can until we can all meet, drink, and eat together in person. So thank you all.
Thank you, Sanjay. I'd be really remiss if I didn't thank Prabhu Hariharan as well, who is on the video right now, for helping us put this together. This ends this webinar. Thank you all participants and featured speakers. Have a very pleasant day.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.